record now. Go. All right, so welcome today. I'm very excited for today's session. I think it will be very informative and hopefully very helpful for everybody. If you are catching the recording, welcome as well. All right, we're ready to go. Let's share. All right, hopefully now you are seeing my screen. One moment, get some things set up here. Okay. Great. Okay. All right. As I said, you can enter questions via the chat anytime throughout. And if there is a natural pause, I will check the chat to see if there are any questions that we could address at that time. Otherwise, we will have time for questions at the end. As I said, this is being recorded, so everyone is muted. We'll keep videos off for now, but there will be time at the end if you'd like to unmute and show your video. So first, before we even get into the presentation, I'd like to take a moment to center us into this space, center us into this conversation, set an intention. So we're going to take a moment to take a deep breath together. Put your hand on your heart, your hand on your belly, just at your sides, wherever it feels comfortable for you. And we're going to take a big cleansing breath in. So, and out through your mouth. Let's take another one. I'd like to set the intention today that over our time together here, we may learn from each other. I'd love to learn from you as well and really expand our horizons to see what's possible for our health, our well-being, our future, our planet. Really open us up to the possibilities that are available to us. So that is a nice intention. So let's get into it. All right, so now for the fun part. So thank you for coming today to embrace the feminine. Despite terms, today we're going to be talking about how to put an end to burnout, chronic stress, and disease, something that we're experiencing a lot of, especially in recent years. Here's our outline today that is going to guide us. We're going to talk just a little bit about how we got here, to understand a little bit of the history, to better inform our path forward to solutions. Then we're going to talk about what costs have come from the way that we have been living, the mental and physical effects of this energy imbalance. And then we're going to get into how we can rebalance, how we can harmonize our energies, how we can mitigate some of this stress and this burnout and the physical fatigue for a brighter and more abundant future. But for those of you that don't know me or are new here, I'll just take a moment to introduce myself. Hi, I am Emma Mulvaney. I am a holistic nutritionist, health consultant, coach, and I recently added feminine energy advocate to my list of passions. So if feminine energy advocate is a new term for you, don't worry, it's a pretty new term for me too. Being an advocate really for me is about bringing balance to our very stressed out bodies, our burned out minds. It's about remembering our capacity to be creative, to have fun, to connect in very loving ways. And more than anything, personally, it's also about embracing our own intuition and wisdom when it comes to our health journeys and other goals. You know, we have so much wisdom that lies within us that oftentimes we don't even need to search for and seek external solutions and external validation and input. We have so much wisdom and intuition just within our own bodies. So for me, that is what feminine energy advocacy is all about. So you'll be hearing a little bit more of that from me in the future as well. And one of the things that has really driven me to that area is a trend that I see not only in the people that I work with, definitely, but also just in the world at large, a trend of energy depletion and disconnection. And this is honestly no surprise after the last few years, but also the decades that preceded it. And we're going to talk about kind of how that energy depletion and disconnection has come about. But it is definitely something that at this time needs to be addressed because it doesn't have to be that way. And there is a more fulfilling path forward if we're open to it. And finally, my mission with EM Holistic Wellness and kind of just my personal mission in life in general is to guide people to come home to yourself. That home within your own body, within your own peaceful mind, is where you're going to find healing, where you're going to find energy, where you're going to find fulfillment. And really coming back to yourself is really what's going to lead you to abundant happiness that we are all just so ripe and deserving of. Now let's get into the meaty stuff, why we're here. So we have what I believe is a cultural and societal acceptance of stress and busyness and overwhelm. It's just like this badge of honor to say busy when someone asks how you are. And it's like something that we kind of embrace in a way. And while there are certainly periods of life that are more stressful than others, raising young kids, going through a transition, grief and loss, medical diagnosis, many other periods that can offer us potent stress. A constant state of stress and overwhelm is not normal and not helpful for us. So there are many factors, many perspectives, many stories of how we got to this point. Today, I just want to offer one lens through which we can see this crisis, really just in order to bring us through to the side of solutions. So today we're not only going to unpack how we got to be so sick, stressed, overwhelmed, disconnected, but how we can undo that. Okay, and then move forward toward a life that is healthy and fulfilling and supportive and connected for the long term. So this isn't a short-term Band-Aid type thing. We're doing deep work here to be connected and fulfilled for the rest of our lives. And I believe that even in times of global strife, so say a pandemic, as the tide shifts with this awareness of the need for boundaries, harmonized energies, and the more that we reject the burnout culture that has taken place, the more prepared we're going to be as a society with tools at the systemic levels and at the societal levels to manage this overwhelm and the burdens and stress that come in times of turmoil. So this is really going to set us up not only to address what we have gone through, but then to also better prepare us for future events. But it has to start with us. It really does have to start at an individual level. It starts with rejecting the normalization of burnout and overwhelm and really embracing a new, more supportive and just easier way of being in the world. Kind of cuts down a little bit on our anxiety there too. We're kind of releasing some of this pressure to be on all the time. And so my approach with nutrition, if you're new here, is in an add before you subtract method, really. That's a similar approach that I see taking here, is really a focus on embracing the feminine and kind of softer energies where we can. And that's going to bring our awareness to where we can crowd out the demands on our attention and our energy that just don't serve us. So by focusing on what we do want, we can begin to eliminate and more of what we don't. And then finally, before we hop into more tactics, let's start kind of setting an intention here of take the best and leave the rest. There may be parts of what I share today that don't resonate with you or don't meet you in your current circumstances, and that's okay. Just take what does resonate, take what parts you can begin to incorporate into your life, and then just let your intuition guide you from there, because you always know better. So there hopefully will be parts here that you can take away. Okay, so how we got here. So as I said, there are many individual reasons for why we may lean more deeply into one energy versus another. But for our purposes today, we're really going to look at the primary drivers for our global crises and societal discontent. And then that's going to have kind of a downstream effect for us to see how this is playing out in our individual lives. So how do we get here? Well, we don't need to dwell in the past necessarily, but it is important to understand our history, as I said, in order to inform our next steps and see where we can make adjustments based on what's not been working. And there's no judgment here. We're just accepting the events and the factors that have led us to this point. Then we can look toward the future with a more informed perspective. So since the Industrial Revolution, and in many places long before that, what have come to be referred to as masculine qualities of productivity, hustle, success, achievement, independence, assertiveness, those qualities have really guided our daily lives and since become the dominant energy by which most of us navigate not only our professional lives, but our personal lives as well. And I just want to pause for a moment and say that masculine qualities are not negative. Let's kind of understand our terms too, okay? So I've already started kind of throwing around the terms of feminine and masculine. But when it comes to energetic exchange, they have nothing to do with gender. These are not gendered terms. These are just the historical reference sets for qualities, but they are not exclusive to men and women. They are inclusive. They're really more like a yin and yang concept, or as a friend recently kind of explored the words soft and structured. I kind of like that. But there's nothing wrong with masculine qualities and masculine energy. And they're not, again, qualities that only men possess. Women are incredibly successful, incredibly high achieving, independent, assertive, and these are all beautiful qualities. We need them. We all possess them, as I said, no matter our identification, and they're incredibly necessary to a functioning and purposeful society and life. However, what has brought us to this crisis point, both with our physical health and our mental health, is the imbalance between these qualities and what we call then the feminine energies. So feminine qualities then are ones of creativity, support, intuition, gathering, flow, rest, cooperation, expansiveness, sensitivity, service, and understanding, and of course, many more. And as a society, we have come to really value the previously mentioned masculine qualities disproportionate to how much we value the feminine qualities. And I believe that this has really come at the expense of our mental and our physical health, as well as our relationship to our others and to ourselves. So again, just to be clear, neither energy is better or more preferred. It's really the imbalance and the disharmony that's posing an issue. What are the issues? Well, let's get into those too. Okay, so we do pay a price with our physical and our mental health. When it comes to the mental side effects of this imbalance, we're experiencing burnout, rampant burnout, especially after the pandemic, stress, lack of community and support, not surprising, fatigue, chronic fatigue, intense fatigue, a lack of connection, so to others and to ourselves, a little bit of that lack of community, but then also just a real lack of depth and connection to our own bodies and our own hearts. A loss of flow, a loss of fun, and a loss of creativity. This, of course, also has an impact then on our physical health. We are sicker than ever with lifestyle diseases. So lifestyle diseases are those like heart disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative and autoimmune diseases, cancer. This is especially important to be aware of for women, as there has been a dramatic rise in the incidence of autoimmune and hormone-related conditions. Not surprising, because those do have very close ties to anxiety, stress, lack of nourishment. So conditions such as IBS, IBD, Crohn's, hypo and hyperthyroid, fibromyalgia, and many more just kind of undiagnosed symptoms that kind of just feel like a general malaise. You're just not feeling well. Another thing that I kind of put under that idea of dis-ease, you may not have a diagnosable disease that you have, but you're not feeling your best. And so the number one lifestyle contributor that we know that is really hitting these diseases hard is stress. And this can be stress as it relates to mental anguish, but it can also be the stress that we place on our body with inadequate nutrition, a lack of exercise and self-care, kind of just the things that we are either doing or not doing that is stress in our body. As maybe dismal as it may sound, it's actually a really empowering thing to think about, to know that we really do hold the key to our health. We have the power to make changes to support a healthier body and mind. But it does go beyond making just healthy food choices and moving our bodies in fun ways and hydrating and managing that stress. That is all very, very important, of course. But it's really going to take digging a little bit deeper into the root causes of how we got so stressed in the first place to understand how we change it. We're going to really peel back the layers to find out what beliefs are living below these habits, below our response to stress. What beliefs are keeping us from making the choices that we know we want to make to live more healthfully and happy. And we may need to completely dismantle some things in order to support more alignment in our life. And this is the part where it can get tricky, it can get a little uncomfortable, but with radical change comes radical results. So for me, kind of in a radical shift, it was leaving my full-time job in nonprofit healthcare associations and following my passion. It was really kind of breaking down what I thought I had to do and making the choice to do what I wanted to do. And believe me, there was a lot that went into making that decision. So it's not just something that I jumped into. But in a similar vein, I'm going to ask you, what is getting in your way of doing the things that you want to do for your life, of being happy, of having more creativity, having more fun? And we're going to get into how we can kind of examine some of those things. What I see really getting in people's way when we kind of boil it down and get to the root of it, not surprising, it's this imbalance of valuing those masculine qualities higher than the feminine, because that is impacting how we operate and how we show up in the world. And that's what is impacting our physical and our mental health. So you can see this layering effect. When we value the success and the hustle, we make choices aligned with that. And we do the things that we think we need to do to align with that, as society has kind of taught us. And so when we start elevating our value of the feminine qualities, we can start making choices aligned with those qualities as well. Choosing rest, knowing when we need rest, recognizing I'm headed toward burnout, I'm headed toward stress. I need to take a step back and care for myself. That is perfectly okay and necessary. Let's say it's even beyond okay. But as I said in the intro, it's really going to take individual shifts to bring about this societal change, which is why we're going to jump into what steps you can take today to bring more harmony to these energetic qualities in your own life. Okay, so there are a few things that we're going to be doing in a few different areas of your life in order to kind of rebalance and reharmonize these energies. So embracing the feminine, when we kind of peel it back and get down to the root of it, it's all about reevaluating what we will accept in our lives on a day-to-day basis and what we won't. So a lack of boundaries, unacceptable. Valuing rest, acceptable. Allowing for flexibility, spontaneity, creativity, acceptable. Those are things that I would say, yes, I want more of that in my life. Until we establish this boundary around what we will accept and what we won't, we're going to continue to fall into the trap of stress and overwhelm. And we're going to continue living according to other people's values instead of our own. So part of this work is really also establishing, what do you value and what do you want more of in your life? So of course, awareness is the first step to making any change. And the second here is intention. So it sounds small and sometimes even potentially meaningless to say setting an intention, but setting an intention really does help you to look at things differently, to identify where in your life you can soften, bring in more joy, creativity, rest, boundaries, as I said. It really starts to shift your mindset to seeing possibilities that you may not have otherwise seen if you weren't open and looking for them, if you didn't set that intention to kind of open and see things that you haven't seen before. So once you set that intention, now what would embracing the feminine actually look like in your daily life? What are these possibilities that you might start to see? Well, first, we're going to talk about creating boundaries, because that is going to be number one as far as even being able to allow these possibilities into your life. So setting boundaries is a bit like the law of attraction. If you continue to be kind of a yes woman or yes man, overextending yourself, you're saying yes to the experience then of being overwhelmed and stressed. You're going to continue to attract those experiences and those demands on your time and energy. So if you find yourself complaining about the same thing consistently, if you feel as if you have no free time, if you're just looking at your calendar and you're just overwhelmed, there's just no space, or if you feel resentful toward either a particular person or a situation that keeps coming up, those are your cues, major flashing red signs that are telling you you need a boundary then around those things. Now, boundaries are not a wall. They are really a loving way to create a filter between the outside world and your internal condition. So boundaries really protect our internal experience. They foster feelings and experiences that we want to have, and then protect against feelings and experiences that we don't want. And so boundaries really are our greatest way to show and to spread love in the world, because when we experience a lack of boundaries, that's when you have that resentment that takes hold. We can experience anger, frustration, stress. There's not a lot of room for love in those situations, okay? If we have a lot of anger, if we have a lot of resentment especially, it's very hard to also balance that then with happiness, love, more positive feelings. But when we set boundaries, we are then increasing our own capacity for love, because we're crowding out kind of those other experiences, and we're allowing for more love in between ourselves and that person or that situation. We remove the barriers to love, really by placing these loving filters then between us and the external experience. So I hope that makes sense. Hop into the chat and let me know if you're kind of on board with that. So setting boundaries does take practice. It's not something, especially women and especially at this time in our history, it's not something that we're taught early on. It's not something that we're raised with. It's something that at this point in the last few years, we are coming to realize we need to practice and develop on our own. And so boundaries are like a muscle that are going to get stronger and easier to flex when you exercise them. So today I am going to challenge you to identify one boundary that you can set this week and follow through with it. Maybe it's a boundary with yourself. Maybe it's a boundary with a loved one. Maybe it's a boundary around a situation that you have or behavior that you're either going to engage in or not engage in. One of my favorites, which I think is a really good place to start if boundaries is new for you, is committing to taking a breath. The next time you're asked for something, next time a demand is placed on your energy, and say, you know what, let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you. It's a simple line. It's accepted by most people. Not many people are going to push you on that. This really allows you a moment away from the demand to check in with yourself. See if that's something that you want to say yes to, and if it's something that you can say yes to. Does your schedule right now and the life that you have right now allow you to say yes to this? Is it something that maybe it is a yes, maybe it's something you do want to do, but you don't have the time for it right now? So maybe that's where you look and say, well, either is there something I can clear to make room for this? Or do you go back to the person and say, you know what, I'd really love to do this, but I just don't have the time right now. Let's revisit it at another time. That's a way to really reflect and then make sure that you are acting in alignment with how you actually want to feel. So just taking that breath and taking that moment, giving yourself the space to decide if it's something you want to commit to or not. Now, I am going to pause here for a moment before we get into a couple more boundaries, just to say that if you don't feel secure in any of these areas, if there's an area of your life that you're not feeling as secure in, maybe it's work, if setting a boundary is going to create too much friction or it's just too uncomfortable to manage right now, then this isn't the area that you start addressing. You can make strides in other areas of your life to really kind of elevate yourself and balance your overall energy, and then come back to this area later when it feels more comfortable and safe. If we start to address areas that don't feel secure and don't feel safe, we can have kind of a a backfiring effect. It becomes not as effective. So wait until you feel comfortable, until you feel safe, and then that's when you start addressing those boundaries. Another great area to start with a boundary is social media. So this may be something where you become aware of how much time you're spending, but it's also a good thing to kind of bring some awareness to how you engage with social media, really either making it work for you and your mental health by following positive content. And maybe it's also setting an intention to engage in only positive ways. Instead of either engaging in, negative comments with somebody or browsing comments to just see kind of what trolling kind of is happening, be intentional about where you're placing your energy and your attention, especially when we're on social media, because it is designed, technology, social media, all of it is designed to be addictive and to draw us in and to be mindless. So what we want to bring to our usage is really just some mindfulness of how we're feeling when we engage with it, and then how we can make it work for us in a very positive way. Another boundary may be around pruning relationships that don't serve you. If there's a relationship that doesn't feel as good to you anymore, if there's activities that no longer speak to you, maybe you've just outgrown some experiences, but you keep doing them because you've just always done them. This is a great time, especially as we're kind of, I will never say, past the pandemic, but we are kind of starting to reintegrate a lot of our old kind of ways of being. We're getting back to a little bit of what feels like normal. This is a great time to assess and to check in with maybe activities that you're bringing back that don't serve you anymore. You have changed over the last couple of years. There's probably some growth that has happened. There might be things you realized you really like. You really like having some alone time during the day, some alone time during the week. And so we are going to, really cultivate that and be aware of things that we want more of, and make sure we get those in our lives. Now, let's also talk about workplace culture just for a moment, because what's happened really with the advent of smartphones and so much technology is this expectation of being available 24/7. And that's not good for our mental health, for our stress management, really for our relationships and our long-term health. It is more than okay to not be available outside of work hours. You're not being compensated for that time, and it's actually hurting your productivity to be, kind of on all the time. If it feels like a safe place to do so, when you come home from work, you're home. You're not checking your work email. You are not looking at your work tasks. You're not thinking about those tasks and those deadlines you have to get done. Set that boundary. We will get deeper into work and family life boundaries in a future webinar. So if that is an area of concern for you or a place that you might need a little help setting some boundaries, we do have a webinar coming up in June that is going to address work and family life. Okay, the next step after we've created some boundaries, and this can happen parallel to or it can happen separate from, but we're going to create space. Part of the burnout and busyness culture has us feeling like there's just no room left in our lives for things that we enjoy and for fun. So if you find yourself again saying, if there were only more hours in the day or days in the week, then this is definitely an area for you. So something that I do myself at the beginning of the week or on a Sunday is I think about how I want to feel this week. Sometimes I might want to feel productive. Sometimes I might just want to feel creative. Maybe I want to feel relaxed. Maybe I just want to have a lot of fun and a lot of joy. And then I plan accordingly. So what activities do I have access to that contribute to those feelings? And then I create space for them. So this is either physically looking at your calendar and blocking out times for these activities that are going to support these experiences. Sometimes it is creating space in my mind. Sometimes it's meditating and saying, you know what, I'm holding a lot of things up in my head that I don't need to be. There are things that are kind of running away with me, then maybe I can say, you know what, that's out of my control. I don't need to be thinking about it. Or, you know what, that's so far in the future that thinking about it now is just stealing time from me now. So creating space where we can. If you're struggling to find blocks of time to schedule some of these activities and to create some of this space, I really suggest doing a time audit. So for 1 week, you're getting really honest and critical about how you spend your time, the amount of time that you spend mindlessly scrolling or unintentionally just spending your time in ways that don't feel good or don't contribute to more positive feelings. We all have these blocks of time. We just need to become aware of them and know where they are so that then we can be like, oh, there's that block of time where I sit and I do nothing. This is when I can do that activity that I know that would really benefit me. So again, it's about protecting your time, protecting your energy. And if your calendar is stressing you out, it's time to prune. Next, and most importantly, I believe, is really continuing and retuning into a connection to ourselves. So when stress comes up, the most powerful and effective resource we have at our disposal is our bodies. So a wonderful effect that each of the feminine qualities has is that they activate our vagus nerve, which activates then our parasympathetic nervous system. Our parasympathetic nervous system is the system that calms our fight, flight, or freeze for our stress response. So when it is in overdrive and we're living in our masculine energy all the time, our bodies are feeling it. We're stressed, we're harried, we're tired. But one of the most effective tools, both for how versatile it is and just how effective it is in really activating that PNS response, is dropping into your body. This is one of my favorite things. You can do it virtually anywhere, at any time. And it really allows you to get to the root of what's causing the emotional response so that you're not just reacting to an emotion or to the stress, you're really getting connected with what's below the emotion and the reaction. So this is an exercise in really also getting to know yourself. Again, if you have felt disconnected, this is a wonderful place to start to really start to cultivate that connection again. So this is included in your workbook, but I will take you through it quickly now. A little bit of a kind of grounding and connection exercise. So I love this. So we're going to take a deep breath. Let it out. And again, you can place your hand on your heart, place your hand on your belly, you can rest them at your sides, wherever you're most comfortable. And once you're comfortable, we're going to begin an exploration into the current feelings. So even if you're not feeling anything particularly strong at the moment, just take this moment to connect to yourself. Maybe ask, where do I feel discomfort? Where in my body do I feel stress? Maybe it is in your belly. Maybe there's a tightening. Maybe it's in your chest. What does it feel like? Is it cold? Is it hard? Is it tight? Take a deep breath into that feeling. And maybe ask, what might this feeling be trying to tell me? What is my body trying to tell me with this feeling? Maybe there's a situation that comes up, that comes to mind when you're thinking about this feeling. Maybe if your shoulders are tight, maybe you're thinking about something you're carrying. Is there a stress, a situation that's weighing on you? And just ask your body, what do I need to know? Is your body giving you direction? Is there wisdom here that your body's sharing with you on what you need to do next? And sometimes just asking, what needs my attention right now? You can take a few more deep breaths into these feelings. And this is a practice that you can do for 3 minutes. It's a practice that you could do for 20 minutes. It's really a time to sit and to cultivate this relationship with yourself. to embrace your intuitive gifts and the wisdom of your body. Because our bodies often know way more than we ever give them credit for. And by turning to it, befriending it, listening to it, that's part of how we're going to harness this improved mental and physical well-being. Because there's a strong tie there between our minds and our bodies. And oftentimes our mind wants to say, somebody else knows, a book knows better, this guru knows better. But really, our bodies know. They have the wisdom. And then just, take a deep breath to kind of close it out. Thank your body for the wisdom that it's giving you. And maybe nothing happened. Maybe you didn't get any big hit. But as you continue to practice, I guarantee you will continue to cultivate that connection, and you will start to hear what your body is trying to tell you. Another way that we can cultivate increased connection with our bodies is by building trust in your body, by responding to what it needs, even in tiny ways. So even at our most basic, when your body is thirsty, when you need water, even if you're not like a big water drinker, you're not super thirsty, even just by responding with little sips, this is a positive response to fulfilling your body's needs. And the more we do it, even in these little micro ways, we're building trust. And over time, we're catering to and we're responding to these needs, and we're responding to what our body's asking for, and we're deepening that connection. And that is going to be, especially if you're going through something health related, related to your physical health. Cultivating that connection in these tiny ways really is going to start to have a major impact down the road. Shoulders tight. Yes, Nikki. I hope you found some relief. If not in this, brief practice here, I do recommend continue to do it and see if there's something that your body is trying to tell you with your tight shoulders.